And now it's my pleasure to introduce our commencement speaker. It gives me great pleasure to introduce Dr. Malbert Smith, a leading national expert in educational reform and president and co-founder of MetaMetrics, Inc. Malbert has been a tremendous supporter, advisor, and friend to me and to our faculty at the school. He's a research professor, serves on our School of Education Foundation Board, provides financial support for graduate fellowships and internships, and mentors a number of our students. In short, he's a member of our family. In 2009, we honored him with the Alumni Achievement Award. He graduated from Duke University in 1975 with a Bachelor of Arts degree in psychology, and then he came to his senses and obtained a master's degree in educational psychology from UNC in 1976 and his PhD in 1979. Before it was fashionable to be called an educational entrepreneur and innovator, Dr. Smith, along with his co-founder Jack Steiner, saw a need to unify the measurement of constructs such as reading and writing and mathematics. They also saw the need to provide teachers and students, parents and policymakers with information from the tests they were administering that provide a basis for action. This insight led them to create the Lexile framework for reading, the Lexile framework for writing, the Quantile framework for mathematics, and a myriad of other resources that use these frameworks. What started out as an initial dream for measurement unification and actionable information now translates to a Lexile or Quantile measurement for more than 30 million students across the United States. Major publishers such as Scholastic and Pearson have built their instructional programs around these frameworks, these critical educational scales that bring meaning to measurement. Not only has every major text publisher in the US incorporated Lexile or Quantile measures into their assessment and instructional programs, but now English language learners throughout the world received Lexile measures from ETS tests like TEFL and TEOC. Extending the work of MetaMetrics internationally, Dr. Smith is engaged with others in helping international students improve reading and comprehension skills. Students who dream of sitting where you are today, graduating from a prestigious American university. Dr. Smith's research and work is informing much of the educational reform that's currently going on around the country. He travels so much nationally and internationally that his family reputedly keeps photographs of him at hand to verify his identity when he does manage to come home. And I heard one of the X-ray machines at RDU was named in his honor. As an educational renowned expert, he's in high demand as a speaker, not just in the States, but around the world. His current focus involves three areas: ensuring that everyone graduates college and career ready, closing the achievement gap, and changing educational policy to ensure that all children do in fact learn the knowledge and skills they need to succeed. Critical to improvement in all these areas is addressing the summer learning loss epidemic, well documented in research, but largely ignored in policy. This has become a particular interest of Dr. Smith. To begin addressing this seminal issue, Dr. Smith spearheads summer reading and mathematics initiatives to help students learn all year round. So from bridging the readiness gap to reading growth trajectory to implementing the Common Core standards, Dr. Smith's policy concerns and expertise take him to every time zone to share his insight, and today they bring him here. Malbert, it's a privilege to have you speak to us today. Class of 2013, please join me in welcoming Malbert Smith.
Thank you. It's an honor and a pleasure to be here. Dean, faculty, and staff, thank you for the invitation. It is an honor to be here. Also, to you guys, what a great ceremony as you came in. I don't know who was happier, watching your expressions or your parents as you walk through, but congratulations, job well done. Of all the graduating ceremonies that will be held in the Dean Dome today, I truly believe that you are the most important for the future of our country. And so I've really tried to think about very carefully the few minutes I have with you of what to share with you. So, what do husbands do? I consulted my wife. Now, she's somewhere in here, and I sought some advice and coaching from her. We've been married this weekend 37 years. And many of those years I've forgotten our anniversary, so I hope she's in here to at least know that I know our anniversary date. But she didn't exactly instill confidence in me. She said, honey, you should make it motivational. And then in the same breath, she said, but you really don't have an impressive track record of motivation. She said, do you remember years ago when your best friend was a college basketball coach? And he had known for years that I wanted to give the pregame speech, the motivational speech right before the team runs onto the court. And he called me up and said, come give the pregame speech. So I flew to his city. I went into the locker room, and I'd worked for 2 weeks on this speech. And I thought it was very motivational. And the team charged out, and it was the worst defeat he had in his college career. Needless to say, I was never invited back for a second speech, and needless to say, he's not a college basketball coach anymore. So she said, well, if you can't make it motivational, at least make it interesting. And in the same breath, she says, but you know, everything that interests you tends to induce narcolepsy in other people. So there you go. So then I thought back to some advice from my parents. My father and mother were North Carolina teachers. They met their first year of teaching in North Carolina. My father was a history teacher, and my mother was a high school chemistry teacher. And my father liked to use examples from history whenever he was teaching his children at home. And he thought every public speaker went too long. He thought everybody should be shorter. And his classic example, whenever he heard a public speaker go on and on and on, he reminded me, and it's indelibly imprinted in my memory, of the story of Abraham Lincoln and Edward Everett. Now, some of you may know this story, but Edward Everett was the greatest speaker in America of his generation. He was sought out to do public speeches all the time. And so he was the keynote speaker at the Gettysburg Address. He spoke for 2 hours. All of us know that Abraham Lincoln, the president, spoke for 2 minutes. And so you will recall the only one we remember is Abraham Lincoln. And my father said there's a lesson in that. So we'll be closer to 2 minutes than 2 hours today. So if you combine my father's advice with my wife's caution that I'll induce narcolepsy, the worst case you're going to experience is a short nap. So why do I think this is the most important graduation ceremony that will be in the Dean Dome? Simply stated, if you subscribe to the belief that I do, that children are our most important asset, then the people who are entrusted with their education are our most important professionals. The value and importance of education is even inscribed in our university's Latin motto, which will be on your diploma, Lux Libertas. I actually looked that up, and Lux Libertas means light and liberty. Light is another word for enlightenment or education. So built into the very DNA of our university's fabric is the value proposition that our liberty hinges upon how well we are educated. Liberty requires, and in fact demands, an enlightened, well-educated society. Our extraordinary rise as a developing country to a global superpower can be traced to the value, commitment, and priority that we have placed on public education. If our future generations are to enjoy the liberties and economic prosperity that we've experienced, it will rest on your shoulders. Other countries have recognized the inextricable link between education and prosperity and are making the requisite investments in education. And part of your challenge will be to not only provide a world-class education to 50 million K-12 students in this country, but also to educate and enlighten our elected officials. Too many elected officials today view money spent on education as an expense as opposed to an investment. If you look at all the micro data, the macro data, the best investment we can make is in education, and too often our elected officials just simply see it as a cost. And so it's our job to educate them better. Just to highlight a few examples, we now know that up to 2/3 of the achievement gap can be explained through the phenomena of summer loss, summer slide, summer fade. These three terms are used interchangeably to refer to the phenomena that many of our kids go home to what I call text-free zones, no books, no magazines. So all of those gains that we get through the school year tend to dissipate over the summer. And the sad reality is we can fix this, but we haven't chosen to. The research shows that if we can get students to read books over the summer that A, they're interested in, B, at their reading level, then largely this summer loss can be eradicated. And again, some of the researchers now at Hopkins are arguing up to 2/3 of the achievement gap is explained by 12 contiguous summers where we turn off the educational spigot. A related and correlated issue concerns the school calendar. In our country, we have adhered to a 100-day agrarian calendar, which made sense when we were a nation of farmers, but I don't think we're a nation of farmers anymore. The average school year in the OECD countries is 195 days a year, and some of the Asian countries now is 220 to 240. If you just take the additional 15 days a year and multiply that by 12, the OECD countries are getting an equivalent of another year of schooling compared to our children. Just do a thought experiment with me. I think this is always interesting, thought experiments. But imagine if our Olympic track team, our Olympic basketball team, could only practice 100 days a year, 180 days a year, yet we were competing with countries in the Olympics that were practicing 240 days a year. It would be on the front page of every major sports paper and probably on the front page of every newspaper. Unfortunately, we need to be as passionate about education as we are sports. And then a last quick example to ponder is our compulsory education laws. 26 states allow students to drop out of school at age 16. North Carolina is one of those, and we need to change that. We do not let students join the military. We don't let them vote at 16. We don't let them buy alcoholic beverages at 16. And if you remember from your psychology and developmental psychology days, the frontal lobe of a 16-year-old is not fully developed. I speak from experience. I had 3 teenagers. So we shouldn't let 16-year-olds be making the most consequential decision of their life. We can do better than that as a country, and our policy needs to reflect that. Secretary Arne Duncan has said that the holy grail of public education is to graduate every single student and to ensure that each student that graduates is college and career ready. Let's be clear, this is a huge and ambitious goal. Never in the history of our country have we accomplished this goal. I mentioned earlier, my parents were teachers. In the 1940s, when my parents were teaching, the high school graduation rate in North Carolina was around 50%. In 1970, when I graduated from high school, it was 77%. So we're asking you to graduate everybody, and when you do graduate them, they need to be college and career ready. In terms of sheer numbers, just to give you a scale of size on this, we lose each year in our country about 1.2 million students. So this is a big task, but I'm very hopeful and I'm very optimistic that it's the right goal and it's one that's achievable. Along with the baton of educational leadership that's being passed to you and your generation comes a strategic drive to raise our standards. This movement and desire has led to the creation of, you can probably cite it, the Common Core State Standards. Have you heard that a few times in the last couple of years? This has been adopted in 46 states and also in our own state of North Carolina. As if our challenges were not enough before, we're now asking you to graduate everyone and simultaneously raise the standards. What a challenge. To realize this holy grail, we have to pay attention to the dual goals in education of excellence and equity. The pernicious effects of poverty are real and are confronted daily by our educators. Many of our children come from dramatically under-resourced families. They enter our public schools not only with a poverty of income, but with also a poverty of academic skills and poverty of academic vocabulary. The disparities have long been chronicled, and there's overwhelming evidence that investment in early education pays huge dividends. Unfortunately, we as a country have been too slow and restrictive in funding these programs. So, what is your role in achieving these ambitious goals? First is the recognition that our influence must reach beyond the classroom and school building. Second is the recognition of the power and influence you have at the individual, class, and school level. When one considers that even with perfect school attendance, no snow days, no teacher work days, we only have a child for about 20% of their waking hours. Yet in that 20% of waking hours, we get all students growing academically and intellectually. It's an amazing what we do in a twinkling of time. And that's the difference that teachers make, and differences you guys will make. Each one of you has chosen to pursue the noblest profession on earth. I want to repeat that. You need to hear this. Each one of these individuals has chosen to pursue the most noble profession there is. I love Aristotle's quote. Aristotle said, "Those who educate children well are more to be honored than those who produce them. For these only gave them life, those the art of living well." While I love this quote, this does not absolve parents of their responsibility. Parents need to be active and supportive partners in their child's education. I have a small staff and office in Seoul, South Korea, and after every visit I come away so impressed with the South Koreans' parental commitment to education. In South Korea, the three most esteemed occupations in this order are teachers, engineers, and medical doctors. Teachers are held in such reverence and awe in South Korea that they have this aphorism that goes like this: "Don't even step on the shadow of a teacher." We could learn a lot from them. My final point is that you should stay true to your passion. Great educators inspire. I suspect all of you were brought to education through a great inspirational teacher. When the National Science Foundation asked the breakthrough scientists what they felt was the most favorable factor in their education, the answer was uniformly association with a great, inspiring teacher. Every day in classrooms across the nation, dedicated teachers inspire the next generation, and each one of you will help shape the destiny of a generation of learners. Henry Adams said, "A teacher affects eternity. He can never tell where his influence stops." Think through your own educational pilgrimage and reflect upon the impact that inspirational teachers have had on your own life and career. I suspect all of you can recall the names of tremendous teachers who have made a difference in your life. I'll remind you that the impact was not just in the formal, intentional instructional delivery, but also in the incidental moments with them. I still have a memory that I think about often. My 5th grade teacher, Mrs. Montgomery at E.K. Post School in Durham, North Carolina. It was a typical configured classroom. All the chairs faced her, and in the back, you had to turn around to see it, but there was a giant wall clock. And as things would get boring, we would tend to look back at that clock. But underneath the clock was a great sign that has motivated me many years of my life. And the sign said this: "Time will pass, will you?" And that stuck with me. And I encourage you to think about it. Time is always going to pass, but will you? And you have today. Congratulations on this. My last official teachers were my professors here at UNC back in the 70s. Their passion, commitment, and scholarship motivated me to try to walk in their footsteps and influence others as they had influenced me. Dr. Gary Stuck, Dr. Ken White, and Dr. Richard Koop were my role models then and are still today. One of my proudest moments that I still cherish is the fact that I published at least one article with each of them while I was in graduate school. Now, my wife was trying to get me to hurry up and get out of graduate school, so she wasn't as happy that I took some time and published with them. They're all retired now, and the task for inspiring the next generation falls upon you. As an educator, you can help like no other profession on the face of the earth to make this a better world. Nelson Mandela said, "Education is the most powerful weapon which you can use to change the world." So be true to our Latin motto, Lux Libertas, and go change the world. Thank you.